Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today we're really going to be talking about making yourself successful and how you who are listening are in charge of that. Nobody else. It's you. And so please join me in welcoming Kris Ashley to our program. Welcome, Kris. How are you?
Hi, Deb. I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
We're going to have such a great chat. But let me tell people just a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this. So Kris Ashley is a dynamic coach, author, speaker, podcast host, and television host with a passion for personal development, spirituality, and science. She has spent over 2 decades immersed in the research and teaching she shares. Following her passion for personal development, Kris trained with renowned life coach Mary Morrissey and began her coaching business, Change Your Mind with Kris Ashley. She also launched her podcast with the same name, and I have been delighted that I was a guest on that. It hasn't gone live yet, so we'll just keep you all posted, but we had such a great chat. Well, in 2022, she published her first book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality, which received endorsements from spiritual and self-help heavyweights, including Michael Beckwith, Marci Shimoff, Bob Doyle, John Gray, and Anita Moorjani. Today, Kris is a regular panelist, speaker, and trainer at personal development events. Whether it's energizing a crowd at a conference or distilling wisdom into a podcast microphone, she's a force that captivates and inspires, always ready to motivate and lead others to their best selves. Holy schmoly, like I said, we are going to have such a great conversation. So welcome, Kris.
Thank you. It's funny. I haven't heard that read out loud that much in so long. Maybe I need to trim that down a little, but thank you for reading it all. I appreciate you.
I try to read what my guests send in. Sometimes they send 2 sentences. I had one that sent a sentence, and I was like, okay, that's not quite enough.
Like, do a little more marketing. Let's talk about marketing.
And so, but it's very interesting when we hear our own bio read, right? Because we're like, ooh, that sounds pretty cool.
Ooh, I've done some things. All right.
I know. So yeah, it's always, and it's one of those that I have found, especially with women, we downplay, right? And guys like, I did this and this and this, and then women's not quite so much. We need to brag about ourselves, because people need to know how absolutely wonderful we are.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Well, as I mentioned in your bio, you've done quite a few things, but tell us how it is that you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the real raw story here for a moment. I got sent on this path of personal development because of my own trauma. And I think a lot of people relate to that who are in the personal development or self-help field or even therapists or doctors, because usually when people go through their own storm and they come out the other side, they're like, I want to help people so that they don't have to go through that like I did. So just real quick, my story is from age 12 to 15, I was sexually abused by a family member. And I had this really big, tight-knit, extended Italian family. Think like my big fat Greek wedding, but the Italian version. And when they found out what happened to me, a lot of them disowned me.
Right.
And I mean, I was getting
your fault.
What's that?
It was your fault.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's always the victim's fault, right? I hate that word, though. I don't use the word.
Yeah.
I was getting phone calls and letters from people who had been like a second mother to me saying they didn't love me anymore and I wasn't their family anymore. And, as you can imagine, this left me with a lot of low
Right.
vibration
Mm-hmm.
emotions like anger and shame
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
guilt that as a young adolescent, I didn't know how to cope with.
Right.
Like most adults don't know how to cope with
Mm-hmm.
those types.
Mm-hmm. Let alone a 15, 16-year-old.
Yeah. So I was in a dark place. I
Mm-hmm.
was acting out in school. I was
Mm-hmm.
doing drugs. I was self-harming. I was doing all the things. And then my life totally changed when someone handed me a book. And what this book did was it opened my mind to viewing the world and the universe and life through
Mm-hmm.
another lens, another
Mm-hmm.
perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember turning the pages and thinking like, oh, it's like a sleeper agent, right? Like something
Mm-hmm.
inside of me just woke up.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finished, I just became insatiable. I started devouring every metaphysical,
Mm-hmm.
spiritual, personal development, psychology book
Mm-hmm.
I could get my hands on. I started going to workshops and retreats. I found teachers to study
Mm-hmm.
under. I tried all these different healing modalities. Like I thought I was unlocking the secrets of the
Mm-hmm.
mysteries and of the universe, and
Right.
really I was doing the hard inner work.
Mm-hmm.
And my life changed. It
Mm-hmm.
did a 180. I was manifesting things. My things were coming with ease. Things were flowing,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in a much happier space. And then the other part of my story is that as I was changing my mind and getting better, my mother started to get worse because she didn't have the books and the
Mm-hmm.
teachers and the
Right.
healing modalities, and her family had been ripped down the seams.
Mm-hmm.
And so it started to manifest as illness for her.
Mm-hmm.
She got very sick. She had things like cancer, and hepatitis, but she also got some very strange afflictions that her doctors at Northwestern were like, we've never seen this
Mm-hmm.
before.
Mm-hmm.
And so they did what they do. They gave her pills, and then
Right.
they gave her pills for the side effects of those pills. And they were kind of
Mm-hmm.
just throwing anything at the
Mm-hmm.
wall, seeing what would stick. And at the height of it, she was on a fentanyl patch. She was on about 11 different pills every
Mm-hmm.
day, including Dilaudid, which is another narcotic.
Mm-hmm.
And she would fall down all the time.
Mm-hmm.
She would nod off at the dinner table. We would have conversations that she wouldn't even remember
Mm-hmm.
the next day. And she slept for all but a few hours of
Mm-hmm.
daylight. And that lasted for almost 15 years.
Wow.
And yeah, and I had this compounded guilt that I had destroyed my
Mm-hmm.
family and broken my mother. But I am a strong believer in that everything happens for a
Mm-hmm.
reason. And I eventually realized that my mother is my biggest teacher
Mm-hmm.
because for every step that I watched her take deeper into depression and
Mm-hmm.
illness and victimization, I climbed in the other direction out of
Mm-hmm.
that tunnel because I saw firsthand right in front of me what happens to a
Right.
human body and spirit when they
Mm-hmm.
make that choice,
Mm-hmm.
because healing is a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I was seeing what was happening to me as I was changing my mind, right? That's the name of my book.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a promise to myself at that point, and it's a promise I've kept to this day,
Mm-hmm.
that I would do everything I could to heal physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and
Mm-hmm.
I would always prioritize my health.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, after a couple of decades immersed in that, the learning never stops. I'm
Right.
still going to,
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking
Mm-hmm.
every course.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still studying under
Mm-hmm.
teachers. I read a book a week, but I finally decided to give back. So I
Mm-hmm.
took the coaching training you mentioned. I
Mm-hmm.
wrote the book largely for my mother. It's
Mm-hmm.
dedicated to her. And yeah, I've been in this personal
Mm-hmm.
development realm. It was my passion for so long, and now it's my career as well. And I'm so grateful for that.
I love it. I love it. And you could have gone one of two ways. You could have gone down a very dark path, or you could have gone down the path you did, right? And and we don't want to gloss over anything. I mean, we're not Pollyanna. There's still times where it's like, this is not good. This sucks, right? But the key is to do that and then go, okay, I'm done. I'm done with that. Now I'm going to go back on the good part. And to, you know, it to definitely, your life is what you make it. I mean, it can't get any simpler than that.
You're making me think of that story. You've probably heard it, of the two brothers
Mm-hmm.
where one went to prison and the
Mm-hmm.
other one was like highly successful, like had his own company,
Mm-hmm.
CEO. I don't remember the exact details, but there was an interview on some news network that asked them, like they asked the brother who went to jail, like,
Mm-hmm.
why do you think your life ended up this way? And he said, well, my dad was an alcoholic. How else would I have ended up?
Mm-hmm.
And then they
Right.
asked the successful brother, how is it that you ended up this way? And he
Mm-hmm.
said, well, my dad was an alcoholic. How else would I have ended up?
Right.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and it gives me chills. Like you said, it really is up to you, and we can't blame outside circumstances or situations or people for our own suffering. Like what happens to you is not your fault, but your healing is 100% your responsibility.
Right. And it is how you view it. You know, and it's interesting. I was talking with somebody about my mother who passed away in March. And she was not a happy person. And never had been, you know. Now there were times when she was happy, but she was just kind of a cranky person. And especially with the people she was close to, you know, she was harder on those people. And I remember, you know, and I mean, it was, you know, always thinking, what's wrong with me? Why doesn't she love me? You know, and then I finally realized, no, you know, it's that's her problem. It's not my problem. But I remember telling my aunt, you know, she and her sister, you know, my mother and her sister, I said, she is broken. We did not break her. We cannot fix her. We just have to deal with, you know, whatever it is, however we're going to deal with it. And some of that was avoidance, right? You know, and I mean, we really see that, you know, we don't want to be around cranky people, you know, and so we avoid them, or we should, right? Because if we're around them, you get sucked into that. But it, you know, when I realized that my mom's issues were my mom's issues and not my issues, you know, it was a definite change. You know, and it was interesting because when she passed, you know, she made up her mind she's going to die. She was fine the day before, and then she was gone the next day. And I'm like, oh, can I sign up for that one too, right? But you know, it was just one of those things where the last conversation I had with her was the funniest, best conversation we could have possibly had. So that's the memory I have of her. You know, but it is, you know, it is how we choose how we're going to deal with things. Are we going to let them break us? Now they might bend us a little bit, but you know, are we really going to let them break us?
Yeah, yeah. And I love that you had that memory of your mother that's so special for you. And I totally relate. My mother is the exact same way, just very, very negative, I would say. And I relate so hard to the idea of wanting to fix her. Like you know, like I said, I had this guilt that I had broken her.
Right.
And which of course, like you said, it wasn't true. And what I did is, you know, I read like a book a week. I'm a total book nerd, and a lot of it's personal developments, a lot of it's business. Um, and anytime I would read something that I thought would help her, I would mail it to her. She lives in Illinois, I live in California. And to me, that was like a love language thing, right? I'm like,
Right.
oh, I read this thing, like, you know, one of them was like Johnny Sarnos's mind-body connection about how pain is tied to repressed emotions. That one had a big impact on me. And I was like, oh, this would so help her. She's in chronic pain all the time. I know it's tied to emotions, right? And she would not receive those well. She would get
Right.
really
You were
offended. She would get
critical.
really upset. She would think, oh, this is you trying to push your beliefs on me, or saying that I'm stupid, or, you know, whatever. And that was a big motivator in writing my book and dedicating it to her. I was like, well, she's going to read a book I write. I know she will, right? And she did, and it did actually end up helping her, which was really cool. But yeah, like you can't fix other people.
Right.
You can plant seeds. You can, I think the best way to actually fix other people or heal a sick society, you know, we just had the election. There's a lot of turmoil, is by healing yourself, right? And then you rise up and you become that beacon for others. And then they're
Right.
like, oh, what's Deb doing? Deb looks really happy these days. And then you can offer them a lending hand up, right? But you can't force anyone to
Right.
change, and you can't force the outside world to change either.
Right. Yeah, it's like addiction. You know, you can send somebody all the books, you can send them to all the classes, AA meetings, all of those things, but until they want to fix it, they're not going to fix it. You know, and of course it's very frustrating because, well, we know better, right? You know, and I'm definitely that way. But yeah, it's you know, it is, it's just it is, I think it goes to show, and you talk about this a lot in your book, just how absolutely powerful our mind is and what happens with our thoughts. You know, I think I shared this with you when I was on your program. I used to work for an oncologist many years ago. And he was, for, 35-ish years ago, this was a very different way for a physician to think. He would tell his patients that 99% of what they were going through was in their mind. If they thought they were going to get better, they would get better. If they thought they were going to die, they were going to die. Now, it might take the span of weeks, months, years. I mean, who knew? But it was the mindset that they were in during that time period that would help them through it. And I remember we had one of the patients, and I was his office staff. I'm not medically trained. And we had this patient, and she said she wasn't going to do she wasn't going to have any of the treatment, any of the surgeries. She was going to take that money and go on an around the world cruise.
Hell yeah.
And yeah, it was like cool. And so we packaged up her records, because at that point, and it may still be, if you pass away in a foreign country, sometimes it's a little hard to get your body back, right? And so we sent her with all of her medical records. And for a while, we got postcards, and it was the coolest thing in the world. And then the postcards stopped. And we decided she had found an island that didn't have mail service. And and that was how we left it. And who knew what had happened? Nobody told us one way or the other. But she decided she was going to enjoy life. And so she enjoyed life. And for however long it was, that was what she did.
I love that story so much. I really love that story. And it's so true. And I saw it happen with my dad. He was told that he needed to go into hospice when he didn't need to go into hospice. And so he just decided that, okay, like I'm just going to give up. And he just laid in bed all day. And then after a few months, he was like, they conned me.
Yeah.
And then he started doing like physical therapy to like, no, literally. Yeah, he's like, they conned me. So yeah, he started doing like physical therapy to like get stronger again so he could walk again. But yeah, no, it's the power of the mind, especially when you're told that by a figure of authority, right? Like a doctor. Like a lot of people put a lot of stake in that.
Right. And then of course we have we all have those little internal voices, but a lot of those internal voices are based on our teachers, our authority figures, and they, in many cases, they meant well. They wanted to protect us. But instead of doing that, they were telling us, you can't do that. You are not good enough. You're not smart enough. I remember being told, oh, now I'm a lot older than you. I'm at the end of the baby boomer generation. And so that was when, women were going to college, but not nearly as much as they are now. And I was going to college. Yeah, that was just a done deal. And I remember my counselor, who I actually didn't like, which was a good thing, because I went, yeah, when she told me this, she said, oh, no, you should go be a teacher or a nurse. And I didn't like blood, so that wasn't going to work. I wanted to go be a lawyer. Now that, that didn't work out, but yeah, she told me, oh no, it would not, girls don't do that. And I very distinctly remember thinking, excuse me, and luckily I did ignore her. But yeah, those people, but she had meant to protect me from some, the world. And, and that's a good thing, but I think we have to watch what we say to people.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think most people have good intentions. And a lot of these limiting beliefs start when we're kids too, right? Because before the age of 7, kids are literally in a theta brainwave state, which is hypnosis, right? So when we say kids are like,
soak it in.
Yeah, exactly. Like when we say they're sponges, they're literally like absorbing it all. They're downloading, they're programmable. So they grow up with the opinions of the adults around them, right? Of societal pressures, of the kids that make fun of them on the playground, that teacher that says you're really good at math, you're smart, or the other teacher that says, oh, you're not a good singer, or whatever it is. And that becomes our lens through which we view the world, right? Quite unconsciously. So a lot of this personal development work is really about unlearning, right? Unlearning all of these things that other people have placed on top of you, so you can get back down to, who you really are, and then program the things you want to program instead, right? Because we're still programmable. We can always reprogram our brain and nervous system, but we have to have that awareness first.
Right. Yeah. And you do have to have that awareness to think, you know what? I've been thinking that all along, and maybe I shouldn't be. Like the whole thing, girls are not good at math. Well, a lot of girls are really good at math.
Yeah.
And a lot of boys are not good at math. I mean, that was kind of one of those things I was always, this is just strange. But and I was fortunate that when I grew up, I had teachers that, some of them, they really didn't fall into traditional roles. Like we had now, like I said, I'm a lot older than you. We had boys who took home ec. They took home ec because they wanted to eat, right? That was, they saw stuff we were cooking. And so that was what they wanted to do. But we also had girls who took shop. And the teachers, the faculty, the principal, all, they had no problem with that. And I loved that because it really did show us we can do whatever we want.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, and now it's anyone can be anything, and you
Mm-hmm.
really
Mm-hmm.
can be anything or have anything or
Mm-hmm.
do anything.
Right.
You have to believe it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So, and I love that you had that attitude growing up, like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go be a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm not
Yeah.
gonna listen to that. So, yeah, I mean, I love that you were so confident in yourself. Unfortunately, a lot of people are easily swayed by
Mm-hmm.
that kind of
Right.
thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they've gone through things, or their lens, makes
Mm-hmm.
them a little more easily swayed
Mm-hmm.
by outside
Right.
opinion.
Right. Well, and on the flip side, I was the gangly, awkward kid that could not play sports. Now, my mom made me play sports. She thought it was really good for the teamwork thing. Ugh, no, I never liked it. I hated it. But which is probably part of why I didn't do well, right? But it was, and I was not a pretty child. And I remember one time, so I'm the oldest grandchild in my family, and I remember one time my grandma was my younger cousin was there, and she's a little about a year or so younger than me, and my grandma was talking to us, and she's gushing over my cousin. She was a cheerleader. Now I was a straight A student, but she was saying, she's a straight A student. She's pretty. She can do this. She can do that. And she looked at me, and so I'm like, what's she gonna say? And
Right.
God bless my grandmother. She said, "At least you're smart." you know,
That's
and
really sad. I mean, but something like
it
that
was like,
stays with
really?
you.
Yeah. I was crushed. I was truly
Yeah.
crushed. Because she had just gushed over my cousin, and it was, well, at least you're smart. But the little redhead kid in me went, fine, I'm going to prove them all wrong. you know?
I love that attitude. I mean, that's the attitude
Mhm.
to have, right?
Right.
To persevere and
Hmm.
to be resilient,
Hmm.
and and that's so important.
Hmm.
Resiliency is so
Hmm.
important, and adaptability and
Hmm.
persistence. And a lot of people
Hmm.
don't learn that until
Right.
later in life. So that's
Right.
pretty
Hmm.
awesome that as a little kid, yeah,
Well,
that's really
my mom, for as negative as she was, I learned a lot from her. I mean, in many ways, I'm very much like her. I mean, she was, nothing was going to stop her. And like at her funeral, she'd written it out years ago, right? What she wanted, made it real easy. But she had, for the music, the Frank Sinatra version, and it said that the Frank Sinatra version of "I Did It My Way."
that.
And isn't that
Oh my God.
perfect? Isn't that cool? Now, the church wouldn't let me do it. I was really annoyed.
Can
Um,
I just tell you, I have to interrupt you. That was my dad's theme song, and the rabbi at his funeral sang it, and we all sang
oh my
along.
gosh. Yeah. And I mean, and isn't that just absolutely perfect? For,
Wow.
for anybody to say, no, I did it my way. And that really is all about what you do. I'm going to do this my way. And I'm going to believe that I'm going to do it my way. And and of course that carries over in business. If you think I'm going to be a very successful business person, then you'll be a very successful business person. If you think
Right.
I'm not really a good salesperson, I hate sales, right? I hear that a lot. Then that's going to be exactly what happens.
Totally.
Yeah, back to, you are what you make it.
Absolutely. And I think also what makes you really good in business
Mhm.
is being willing to take risks.
Right.
And that has to do with that persistence and that resistance and that adaptability to be like, well, it's all going to work out anyway, right? And if this doesn't work, then I'll try something else. And if that doesn't work, I'll try something else. Like, the CEO of my husband's business, he's the president, and his CEO is awesome. She's this badass woman. And I've told this story before, but she's very religious, and her whole thing is, it doesn't matter what I do here. I'm going home to Jesus. So like, and so she'll take like massive risks that other people would be like terrified to. And it pans out for her. And she's had wild success. And it's that attitude of like, this is all the game, right? Like this is all an illusion, this 3D world, right? Like it doesn't matter. So might as well play the game well.
Right. And other people might think, I'm going to go on to the next plane of existence, or, whatever it is. And I love, now I admit you kind of hurt my brain when I was reading in your book and you were talking a lot about quantum physics, but I also was thinking, I've heard about this, Big Bang Theory, right? But it is very much, so tell us a little bit more about that, because I'm not going to do it justice. So explain that, maybe there's lots of other options.
Quantum physics is so cool because it is science that backs up what spirituality and mystics have been saying for eons. And we live in such an exciting time where the science is backing it up. And same with things like epigenetics and neuroscience and all of these things really are. But quantum physics is amazing. And I mean, there's so many different examples of it that I give throughout my book. But, just to go off the topic that we're talking about, there's the many worlds theory that says there are other worlds, dimensions that are laid on top of ours, kind of like transparencies, and our timelines can branch off. So here, let me like make it simple. Let's say that you have a choice to make. And you make choice A. Let's say I'm going to, take this job or do this business deal, whatever. We'll keep it business related. And so you go on your timeline and you make that business deal. But then your timeline branches. So there is another version of you that exists that makes that other choice. And then the next time there's a time to make a choice for each of those, their timelines branch off and their timelines branch off. So there are countless timelines starring you as the lead actor that you can live right now. And some of these other timelines are very similar to the one that you're actively living, and some are vastly different, right? So there's a version of you out there that has that dream job, that has that dream relationship, that has all the things that you want right now, right? So the idea in quantum physics with the many worlds theory is that all of these other possibilities exist in this kind of like realm or cloud of possibilities. And all you have to do is choose it.
Right.
Using things like the law of attraction, right? Or your thoughts, or like manifest it. And you can call into existence. But if you can imagine it, it exists out there. And they call that like timeline jumping, right? Like quantum jumping, that you can actually like move onto a timeline where that exists. And it sounds so woo-woo. But
unless you like Star Trek and all of those things.
Oh yeah, no, I grew up on that too. But it's backed by science. And it's so exciting. And it really makes life feel like a game, and where there are these possibilities that are endless out there, right? And it's just so exciting. And yeah, no, anything that you can imagine can come to fruition.
Right. And that's positive and negative, right? Again,
totally.
If you are saying, oh, woe is me, the sky is falling, then the sky will fall. And so, and so then when you think, okay, no, I'm not going to do that. I was told, or my husband was told 3 different times that I was going to die. And I remember one of those times thinking, excuse me, I get a vote.
You're like, I'm right here.
Yeah, hello. And or just like with my mom, she was done. she had done what she really did. She was like, nope, I'm done. And so, or whether it's, I'm going to take that job, I'm not going to take that job, I'm going to go after the big client, not go after, all of those things, because you can always change it. And for some people, that's learning from our mistakes. Okay, that's fine. And all of those things, but it really is, okay, it didn't work that way. Let's pick a different way.
Totally. And you're making me think of, especially with health related, the placebo and the nocebo effect, which
Right.
are so fascinating. I don't know if you got into that part of the book, but we all know what the placebo effect is, but there have been some amazing, amazing studies. I don't know if you're familiar with Ellen Langer out of Harvard, did this incredible study where, let me make sure I get all the details right. So this was in the 70s. So she took 5 men, I think, who were elderly, and she put them in a house that was designed like it was the 1950s, right? So the TVs only played historical events as if they were current events, right? All the newspapers and magazines and books around were from the 50s. They had to dress like they were from the 50s. There were no mirrors, and there was no one there to help them with their luggage or to help them up the stairs. And they took all their health markers, and they had a control group that also lived in a similar house, but they weren't told to act like it was the 50s, like this other group. And the results were amazing. People's vision improved. They were standing up taller. Their cognitive memory improved. They played a game of touch football on the lawn. One guy came in a wheelchair and left just using a cane. Another guy had like a dinner party that like could barely get dressed on his own. And this was 5 days.
Right.
And then there's another story about this orthopedic knee surgeon who had 3 groups, right? There was so it was orthoscopic knee surgery. So one group, they just shaved some of the bone down. Another group, they did something else. I don't know. It's the details are in my book. And then the third group, they didn't do anything. They pretended to have surgery.
Right.
And they even the people they were
gave a
pretending
little
to,
incision.
they even, did the incision. They sprayed saline solution to make it, and they gave all of them the same care instructions, including PT. And the group that didn't get surgery recovered just as well as the other 2 groups.
Right.
Now, just like you were saying, the nocebo effect is just as powerful. And that is the belief that you can get a disease or an illness or that you're dying because either you've been told that or you believe that you've been exposed to something, or you believe it. So you can make yourself well, but you can make yourself sick too.
Right. And we've certainly seen people make themselves sick.
Yeah.
Whether it's, a teenager that doesn't want to take that test, or we don't want to give that presentation, all of those various things. And a lot of, part of that is, you tend to not sleep well when you're worrying about it. You're not eating well. I mean, all of those things. And it just manifests itself into you've given yourself at least an upset stomach, if not more, and all of those things. Instead of thinking, I'm going to knock it out of the park. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this really well. And I think it's not something that we're really taught, and which is kind of a shame, right? And I think, and you mentioned it earlier, I mean, the world right now is a pretty negative place, but it doesn't have to be. I had somebody who was angry at me that I was not really angry about the election results. I mean, like rage filled. And I was like, nah. And then I had somebody else who was really upset with me that I wasn't ecstatic over the election results. And, I looked at both of them and I said, and what is going to, either way, it doesn't change it. But yeah, it was, what was going on. And, and I think it is that is we get to fretting about stuff, and we really do think this is the way it has to be. Well, it's our perception of it. I had one person who was very, very upset about the election. And I said, and to the point of she was depressed. And I said, why? I said, I'm not trying to argue with you. I just, why? And she said, this, and I said, well, if you're really that upset, then you should leave. I mean, and I said, or you work to change it. And she said, I tried and it didn't work. And I said, so what is saying you have to give up? And I told her, I said, it's perfectly fine to be angry and be upset, but then what's the next step? For a lot of people, they stay in that anger, that depression, much like, unfortunately, like your mom did. Rather than having, people ask me that with my cancer. I'm on my third cancer. My first cancer says stage 4 diagnosis, which that's not a good diagnosis. And I'm like, whatever. But people ask me, how do I stay so happy about it? Well, I could feel really bad, and there are times I do, but then I just go on. And a big part of it though is the support we get from others. And so, I think that's and who we surround ourselves with, right? If we're surrounding ourselves with toxic people, then we're going to be living a toxic reality. If we're surrounding ourselves with positive people, then that's going to make things different also.
Yeah, absolutely. I've so many things to say for so many things you said because
I
you
know,
you
I,
made
I just
so
rambled
many
along.
no, you made so many great points. And I guess I'll start with the election because here's the thing, like there are a million different realities
Mm-hmm.
going on, right? We were just talking about this in quantum physics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And any reality that you choose can become your reality. And
Right.
the way that you choose a reality is you start to focus more on the reality you want,
Mm-hmm.
and the one handed to you by default starts to
Mm-hmm.
fall away.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean you're burying your head in the
Mm-hmm.
sand and not paying attention to what's going on the news,
Mm-hmm.
but it means you're not getting emotionally wrapped up
Mm-hmm.
in it.
Right.
Because the universe works like the Facebook algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
If it sees you getting emotional
Mm-hmm.
about something, it goes, oh, you like
Right.
that. Okay, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to give you a little more of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to get more of that sent your
Mm-hmm.
way. And you can't, and I was kind of saying this earlier too with like how you heal a sick society, like
Mm-hmm.
you can't fight for peace.
Right.
That doesn't work. And really, you can't fight for change. You can change yourself and
Mm-hmm.
you can change your thoughts and you
Right.
can change your beliefs and you can
Mm-hmm.
change what you focus
Mm-hmm.
on and your habits and your emotions that come
Mm-hmm.
from all that. But you can't force the outside world to
Mm-hmm.
change. So you get to focus on whatever reality you want. And it's
Mm-hmm.
true that like two people might be living next door to each other and seem to be living in different realities.
Mm-hmm.
But and so like let's just take like the war for
Mm-hmm.
example. There's so many people that are like, "Oh my God, but there's this war going on." And it's like right, but is it affecting you personally?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And if it's not, like if you know someone, like I have 30 family members in Israel. It
Mm-hmm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
it affects me personally to some
Yes.
extent.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are not affected personally and you're
Mm-hmm.
allowing yourself to get so wrapped
Mm-hmm.
up in this anger or these emotions, like that's just bringing more of that to you and to
Mm-hmm.
the world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what you can do is, like you said, you can think of like positive ways that you can help,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, what can I do to help these people?
Mm-hmm.
Can I donate? Can I,
Mm-hmm.
do something to raise
Mm-hmm.
awareness? But like, it can't come from a place of anger and
Right.
division
Mm-hmm.
because you are going to send more of that out
Mm-hmm.
into the world.
Mm-hmm.
The law of attraction is real, the quantum field is real, and the
Mm-hmm.
quantum field reflects what we're sending it.
Mm-hmm.
So all you're going to do by getting wrapped up in anger is send humanity more things to be angry
Mm-hmm.
about
Right.
and more things to be angry about in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And then to speak on what you said about the presentation, like getting nervous about a
Mm-hmm.
presentation or pretending you're sick, like anxiety and excitement are the same emotion,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can use that energy to amp yourself
Mm-hmm.
up or to wear yourself
Mm-hmm.
down, right? And you have a choice and you always have a choice. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's like, if you're going to take away anything from this episode, it's you have a choice,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like one of my really good friends used to be a pro NFL player and he's
Mm-hmm.
like a life coach now and he's amazing. He just published his book. But his whole thing is like, okay, if you're standing there and you're feeling nervous before a game or before a
Mm-hmm.
presentation, think of it like, okay, my pupils are dilating because it's going to help me see better. All the
Right.
blood's going to my brain because it's going
Mm-hmm.
to help me think on my feet
Mm-hmm.
more. And like, And like your body is literally like fight or flight is like your body is getting you ready for the big game, right? As he would say. But that's like a really good way to like not have a panic attack before, right? And like
Right.
body language is everything. Like Amy Cuddy has that amazing TED talk about like just standing in Superman pose
Yeah, the
before and
Superman
just
pose.
yeah, like what I say before everyone, I was like, I'm gonna rock this podcast episode. Like, amp yourself up, say something to like get you pumped, right? Like your energy is everything, right? It's gonna dictate the results that you have.
Right.
So, and I wrote down in my notes as you were talking, like, try everything. Don't say like, oh, your friend that said like, oh, I already tried to like make an impact on the election. Like, and this is a Tony Robbins thing, like if you had tried, you didn't try everything because if you had tried everything, you would have found something that worked. Again, be adaptable. So that's sorry. Now I rambled, but you had
That's
so
all
many
right.
good points and I had so much to say about all that.
I love it.
Being
And
passionate.
yeah, and I love that, because that passion comes through. And which is why you're so good at it. But I was also thinking as you were talking, that a lot of times, when we're getting excited about something, that adrenaline goes up. And I remember hearing Barbara Streisand talking one time about how she always got so nervous and still does probably before every performance. And she said, rather than making her think, oh my God, I can't go out there, she used it as a way to really ramp herself up. And we've seen like Tony Robbins run onto stage and all of those. And we've also seen the people who stroll out. And it's, hey, how you doing? Because it doesn't mean anything to them anymore. And and it really annoys me when I've paid to go see somebody do that, right? Because for them, it's like, I don't care. I don't want to be here. I'm getting paid to be here. I'm going to give you the absolute minimum. And because that's their mindset, that's what comes across to the rest of us.
Totally. I mean, people can pick up on that. And it goes the same with if you're being inauthentic to yourself, people can pick up on that. If you're BSing them, people can pick up on that. Like it's energy. We are energy creatures. We feed off of each other's energy. We pick up off of each other's energy. So yeah, I mean that's another way that you can really affect people in your immediate surroundings.
Right. And you can use it in other ways too. Like we've heard examples of, when there's an argument going on, you want to de-escalate it by lowering your voice, by not yelling, by, and because then they're going to mimic it. And a lot of things like that. It's so very true. You could keep yelling and they're going to keep yelling and it's going to get more and more, or you could pause. And I always tell people, there's something going on if I get really quiet. If it's, and that's part of it is, and I could yell. I am a redhead. I have that temper. And
Fiery.
So yeah, it is definitely fiery. But I have learned, if I'm gonna, try and change the situation, then we have to de-escalate it. And so that is lowering your voice, maybe taking a less aggressive stance, all of those various things. Because it's, we've all noticed it's really hard to yell at somebody if they're not yelling back at you.
Totally. I mean, and that's like classic NLP too, which is like so fascinating. I do panels a lot for the Los Angeles Tribune. We do a lot of stuff with personal development. I'm a partner of theirs in their leadership academy. And we were just on a training the other day for, on these personal development events, there's someone will go on for an hour and then someone else, and then there'll be a panel and there's these different segments and it's like you have to do pace, lead, right? Like if someone's coming on like super high energy, like you can't come on and be like, all right, we're going to do a meditation, right?
Yeah.
Or we're going to be super low. Like you have to kind of match their energy and then you can kind of like guide people through it.
Right.
Because that's really abrupt for people. But yeah, no, it's so true. People will start to mirror your energy.
Right. And there is obviously something to the concept of the crowd mentality. If it starts to rise, you get caught up in that. And I was talking to somebody the other week about this. We had a mayor here several years ago Her name was Keisha Lance Bottoms, and she's African American and 45-ish, and fairly petite. And we were having some issues here in Atlanta where there were some pretty dramatic things that were going on and a lot of violence and things like that. And she marched down there, much to the chagrin of her security people, right? And she went right up to who looked like the people who were in charge, the big men who were yelling and waving sticks and probably other things. And she shook her finger at them. And I remember watching this on TV. It was fascinating. And she said, and in a calm tone of voice, you stop this and you go home. and of course they went right. And and somebody, and every time I think about that, it's like, oh, she mothered them. Right.
Yeah.
And but that really was what she did. I mean, and she said, no, enough. But because she did it in that calm tone of voice, and she also showed him she was not afraid of him, and I think that was a big part of it. But it was just very interesting when it was happening, because I'm sure her security people were thinking, oh, yikes. But they also knew who she, what she was like. I'm pretty sure, that, but yeah, I mean, it was just, she went and she told him, nope, you're done. You've made your point. You're done. But I loved it when people said she mothered them.
I mean, totally. I love that. That's great.
And one of the other things that I love that you talked about in your book is the concept of forgiveness. And I think that is one of the hardest things for people. So talk more about that.
How much time do we have left? Because that's my favorite thing to talk about. Forgiveness, we've all heard this, but like forgiveness isn't for the other person.
Right.
It's for you, right? And oftentimes we think like, oh, these people are like going out trying to make chaos and havoc in our lives. But the truth is, most people aren't worrying about you, right? They're out there in their own head, in their own stuff. And I'll say we, so it's not you, but like we tend to take things really personally, right? Like all we're worrying about is how it affects us. And if we can start to like unpersonalize this and to like distance ourselves in that respect, it's a total game changer. There's a little teaching story that I love to share. So if you imagine you're just sitting on your couch and you hear this meowing going on outside, and you go outside to see what's going on, and like way off in the corner of your yard, you see this scrawny black and white cat. And you're like, I love kitties. I'm going to go pet the kitty. I want to take care of the kitty. And you go over and you start to pet the cat, or you go to pet the cat and it arches its back and it hisses and it swats. So what are you thinking? You're thinking, oh, that's a mean cat. That's an evil cat. Like that cat's kind of an asshole, right? Hopefully I can swear on your show.
Yeah.
But if you stay and you allow yourself to really see that cat, you might notice its leg is bleeding. And so your mind starts to go, okay, this animal's injured. Then if you keep staying and you keep seeing, you might hear some tiny mews. And you look behind it and you see 4 little kittens with their eyes still closed. And then just like that, your perspective shifts to one of compassion, concern, empathy. And you can do the same thing with the people in your life, because usually when people hurt you, they are coming from a place of their own pain and their own fear. And it has absolutely nothing to do with you. And if you saw the big picture, you'd probably only have compassion for them. Now, we tend to turn people who have hurt us into monsters. And that is because it's easier for us to hate them.
Right.
So we run everything they've ever said and done through this imaginary filter that turns it into this, this very like plotting evil thing, right? They've like purposely been out to get us. And again, that's just because it's easier for us to see them that way. But if you take a step back and decide to turn these people from monsters into beings that have actually taught you something, into teachers, it will completely change your life. Because when someone is your teacher, you are always learning. Now, there are 2 ways to turn a monster into a teacher. The first is to recognize ways that they've helped you. Right. Nice things they've done for you, things that you
Mhm.
admire about them.
Right.
There's probably something you admire about
Mhm.
them, and they're not this like purely evil entity
Mhm.
that your lack of forgiveness wanted you to believe,
Mhm.
right? Like, what nice things have they done for you? What
Mhm.
nice things have they done for the
Mhm.
world? There's other people in their life, and
Mhm.
likely some people love them,
Right.
right? What
Yeah,
do
and
those people see
maybe
in them?
you just didn't hit it off, but it was good for other people with them.
Right. And like that's the thing, like
Mhm.
just like all these other perspectives that we've been talking about,
Mhm.
all these other things we've been talking about this whole show, you get to choose what you focus on in a
Mhm.
person. If you
Mhm.
focus on a negative aspect, you're
Mhm.
going to keep getting negativity,
Right.
right?
And you'll
So,
see everything that they do as being negative.
exactly. Yes, exactly. So, the first way is like to come up with like things about them you admire, good things
Mhm.
they've done, good qualities they have.
Mhm.
And if right now you're listening and you're like, Psh, I know who my monster is, and there's nothing about them I
Mhm.
admire, like they are worse than Satan
Mhm.
himself,
Mhm.
like, okay, there's another way to turn a monster into a
Mhm.
teacher, and that is by recognizing ways that they've helped you grow.
Mhm.
So chances are they've done something that has allowed you to grow, or
Mhm.
you could still grow.
Mhm.
You just have to get over your anger.
Mhm.
So maybe they helped you realize how you don't want to treat other people.
Mhm.
Maybe they've helped you set stronger boundaries.
Mhm.
Maybe they've helped you step into your
Mhm.
power. But if you can turn them into a teacher, it will
Mhm.
completely change your life.
Mhm.
Because when you hold on to resentment and anger and all of these low vibration emotions, it only
Mhm.
hurts you,
Right.
right? It's that
Yeah, it
Buddhist
does.
quote, it's like holding,
And to be honest, they probably don't care.
oh, totally.
Mhm.
Right. Like they probably forgot about it
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
it wasn't a big deal to them.
Mhm. Mhm. So then
Depending
your
on the
ego's
situation. I'm
like,
sure
well, wait a
someone's going
minute.
to be
What
in
do
the
you mean they
comments,
don't
but
remember? Right.
yeah,
Mhm.
but and I mean, we're talking about like everyday, like
Mhm.
little,
Mhm. Right.
but
Mhm.
yeah, no, and we tend to internalize these
Mhm.
things and take them really personally.
Mhm.
So, um, my husband just went to this seminar, and the guy speaking told this fantastic story where he pulled a man up on stage. He was like, "Who has like an issue they want help with
Mhm.
today?" And this guy raised his hand, and he was like, "I can't." He couldn't even look the speaker in the eye,
Oh.
right? He was so insecure, so down on himself, had
Mhm.
zero self-worth, and the speaker took him back through some sort of repression,
Mhm.
and it they pinpointed that the moment this guy totally lost his sense of self-worth.
Mhm.
And he was about 6 years old, and he was in the back seat of the car with his parents in the front seat, and he was singing.
Mhm.
And his mom turned around and looked at him and said, "Shut up, you idiot."
Oh.
And in that moment,
Mhm.
he was like, I am worthless. I am
Mhm.
horrible. I can't
Mhm.
sing. And from then on out, he felt shut down. He had
Mhm.
zero self-esteem.
Mhm.
And like he had this breakthrough with this
Mhm.
speaker. And the speaker was like, well, have you confronted your mom about this?
Mhm.
And luckily his mom was still alive, and he did. And he was like, hey, mom, do you remember that time in the car when I was
Mhm.
singing and you said, shut up, you idiot? And his mom started laughing. And he was like, how could you laugh at this? Like,
Right.
this destroyed my life.
Mhm.
And she was like, oh my God, I'm laughing because I said that to your father. He was being a total idiot that day.
Mhm.
And I said, shut up, you
Mhm.
idiot. But the kid thought it was on him.
Mhm.
And this man went like
Mhm.
50 years of his
Right.
life
Mhm.
believing something that
Mhm.
wasn't even directed at him.
Mhm.
And that is like such a beautiful
Mhm.
metaphor for how so many of
Right.
us take things
Mhm.
personally.
Mhm. Right. And and for the most part, people don't deliberately mean to hurt you. Yeah, there are
Exactly.
those who do. And but and let's face it, folks, if you're around people like that, you need to not be around people like that.
And
Um,
ignore the internet
yeah.
trolls. Don't read the
Oh,
comments.
oh, I know. And yeah, I've had people that have said things, and I'm like, seriously? Like I had one guy who and it was somebody I didn't even know. And somehow we got into a conversation about tattoos. And I said, I have a tattoo. And this man who I didn't even know started in on me with how could I deface my body like that and yada 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 yada. And and it didn't, I didn't know who he was, so he didn't really bother me. But then I thought, no, I'm not going to let it go, because he needs to know that wasn't appropriate for what he said. Now I probably should have let it go, but and so I went back and I told him, I said, okay, so my tattoo is the word warrior. it is the word warrior because I have cancer and that helps me get through it. And I said, and even more importantly, it's one of 7 tattoos because I have 6 radiation tattoos. And he came back and he apologized. And or like the people who poked fun at people for wearing their masks and all of those things. I mean, like I had people who said, I can't believe you're still wearing a mask. Well, I'm sorry, I had chemo today. And it does kind of go to the thought of we never know what somebody else is going through, but we all those little stories in our head start going, right? And so I think one of the biggest things is give them grace, give yourself grace and give them grace. Like you said, she didn't mean to call the little kid an idiot.
Yeah, you're making me think of triggers, and
Mm-hmm,
triggers are mirrors.
mm-hmm,
And if something triggers you in another person,
mm-hmm.
it is showing you what is unhealed in yourself.
Right. Mm-hmm,
Because if you had already healed that part of
mm-hmm.
you,
It wouldn't trigger.
you wouldn't have an emotional
Mm-hmm,
reaction to
mm-hmm,
it. Right. So, and David R. Hawkins has this phenomenal book called Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender. And he talks in there about how, you know, situations don't make people angry.
mm-hmm,
People are already angry because they have that repressed emotion of
mm-hmm,
anger,
mm-hmm.
and they're constantly looking to vent steam.
Right.
Right? It's like a pressure cooker.
Mm-hmm,
They have to
mm-hmm,
release that. So they're looking for situations to make them angry.
mm-hmm,
Right? I mean, and I understand that you felt personally needed to like
mm-hmm,
go talk to that person. What I do with the internet trolls, or if I even respond,
mm-hmm.
is I kill them with kindness.
Right. Mm-hmm,
Because if you treat someone with kindness,
mm-hmm,
it's going to throw them off their
mm-hmm,
game, and then
mm-hmm.
maybe they'll go be a little
Pause.
kinder to
Mm-hmm.
someone else, right?
Right.
Like
Mm-hmm,
I used to teach yoga. I had a I was a director of a yoga company, and then I
mm-hmm,
opened my own yoga studio. And I mean, as you were talking, I had someone in class one day stay for 5 minutes in my class and then
mm-hmm,
walk out. And like, if anyone leaves, you have to like go check in with them, right? To make
mm-hmm.
sure they weren't injured or
Right.
something,
Right.
because
Mm-hmm,
you're liable, right?
mm-hmm.
So I was like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, I just don't like your voice. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
That is literally, and I said,
Right.
okay, have a great day.
Mm-hmm,
Like that has nothing to
mm-hmm,
do with me.
mm-hmm. And you weren't going
Zero
to
to
change
do
it.
with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is everything to do
Mm-hmm,
with him.
mm-hmm.
That is his stuff, right?
Right. Mm-hmm,
Um, so, I mean, sure, like you can okay, here's the paradox of forgiveness, right?
mm-hmm,
You always have a choice, right? You don't
mm-hmm,
have to place blame on other people,
mm-hmm,
right? You can choose to respond rather than
mm-hmm,
emotionally react.
mm-hmm,
Or if you really want to be
mm-hmm,
masterful, you don't even respond.
mm-hmm.
You just let things
Yep.
go.
Mm-hmm,
So the paradox to forgiveness is that if you choose to not place blame on another person,
mm-hmm,
there is nothing even left to forgive.
mm-hmm. Right.
All
It's
there
just
is to do
done.
is let things go.
Mm-hmm,
Because what other people say and do has nothing to do with
mm-hmm.
you.
Right.
And the sooner we learn to not take that personally, the more peace we are going to have in
Mm-hmm,
our own lives.
mm-hmm. Right. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, oh my gosh, Kris, this has been so fascinating. And I think we need to do it again at some point because I think there's going to be more turmoil in the world and more
Yeah.
things that, right.
Well,
It's just the way things are going to go. And it's always been that way. I mean, that's one thing I told somebody. I said, half the people are never happy at an election, right? I mean, or the wars and things like that. I mean, it's just always going to be there. People won't get to,
I'm hopeful that we're gonna create a more beautiful society though.
yes,
I'm
yes.
gonna put
Mhm.
that energy
Yeah,
out into the
yeah.
universe that it's
Mhm.
that
Right. And yeah, and now you can't please everybody all the time, but we
totally.
can we can at least try. And more importantly, we can try to not piss them off. Right? Mhm.
Yeah, but like also you're not gonna please everybody. And if you go
No.
around trying to please
Mhm.
everybody, you're just going to get
gonna,
pulled in a million different directions. You have to follow your heart, right? That's the only North Star you need.
Right. And trying to please everybody actually causes much more angst and all of that, because you're not following your path. You're following
you're not
their
being
path.
authentic to yourself. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this has been so much fun. But if somebody is saying, Kris, I need to talk to you, how do they find you, and what are the services that you provide?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I am Change Your Mind with Kris all over social media. Kris is spelled with a K, by the way. So Change Your Mind with Kris on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram. I'm really hoping TikTok doesn't get banned like it's supposed to. Kris Ashley on Facebook. And then krisashley.net is my website. From there, you'll be able to find my podcast, my book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality, is available in paperback, ebook, audiobook. I have some online courses, group coaching sessions, not doing one-on-ones at the moment because I realize I can serve more people other ways, but I've got a lot going on, so check out the website.
I love it. And again, it's Kris with a K, ashley.net. And we will have the link in the show notes. Well, this really has been so much fun. And more importantly, I hope it's been helpful to people. We talk a lot about business things, but my point with this was, if we're not happy with ourselves, it's not going to matter. Our business can be extremely successful, can be not successful, all of those things. We have to be right in our hearts and our heads before anything else goes forward. So do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
As you were just saying that, the thing that popped in my head is your business is a reflection of you. So, people can look successful on paper, right? They can have the big house, they can have the nice car, but it doesn't mean that they're not bankrupt in other areas of their life, right? Like their relationships or their health or their passions. So, I didn't plan anything, but I think I would just say, like, your business, there's a reflection of you, and your thoughts create your reality. So if something is going on in your reality, in your life, in your world that you're not content with, and this is a really hard pill to swallow, you have to change the way that you're thinking, your perception, because that's how you're going to change your outer world. Your inner world creates your outer world. So the way to heal yourself, the way to heal the world is by healing your inner world first.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having so much fun talking with Kris Ashley. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Thank you for having me.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.